Hello and welcome to the FatBoss Guide to Lei Shi 10-man heroic in the Terrace at the Endless Springs.
Hello.
And this encounter, it hasn't changed too much to be fair, but there is one thing that's been changed, which is like a scary fog that gives you like a damage multiplier. But it does actually change the fight quite a lot just because of this one mechanic, which makes it quite a decent boss.
So if you haven't seen the normal mode guide to this fight, then please do click up on the annotation on your screen now, and that will take you over to the normal mode guide, and that will just cover everything if you don't know everything about the boss, because we're really only talking about the changes on heroic and how you need to deal with it on heroic, not what every boss mechanic does. So click on that and you'll save us some time.
Now for this encounter you want to bring 2 tanks, you can bring a 3rd tank, we'll talk about that in a moment, 2 healers or 3 healers, we'll talk about that also in a moment, and DPS, ideally you want to bring at least 2 mobile range DPS if you're going with a 2 tank tactic, and if you're going with a 1 tank tactic then you only need 1 mobile range DPS, mobile range DPS being an Ellie Shaman, or a mage in this case, which you'll understand in a moment, and hunters obviously are really overpowered, so... But yeah, it doesn't matter too much what you bring. Like we said, the boss hasn't really changed too much. She'll still do the spray on the tanks, and you want to swap around 8 to 10 stacks to start with, and then obviously as the fight progresses and goes on longer and longer, the boss will get a casting speed increase, which means you need to taunt later and later. And generally the damage from this isn't that high, providing your tanks do it properly, so you don't need to worry about this too much, and healers really just need to spam heal them. But we'll talk about who else you have to heal in a minute. There's still the 2 specials, Hide and Getaway, which you need to make sure that you deal with them as quick as possible, making sure you split your raid up in the room when the Hide comes in, AoE, get the boss out as soon as possible. And for the Getaway you need to nuke your living tits off just to get the boss out of that phase, because there is a lot of damage from that, and you pretty much have to run against it. If you don't run against it, you can take so much fucking damage. It says that it's 50% more, it doesn't feel like 50% more, it feels like 150% more.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy. You just need to run against it.
Yeah.
Now the boss still does protect at the 20% health intervals. Of course with this you can do it in, the guilds do it in many different ways. Either you do hard CC, or well, quick CC on everything, or you can kite them with like a taunt banner up. So however you dealt with doing it on normal mode, you just need to do it the same on heroic mode, but just 100% better, because if any of these ads hit anyone else, it's most likely to one-shot them, and if they're on a tank, it's really quite close as well, so you need to do what you did on normal, but just very, very well, because, yeah, shit hurts.
Apart from that, there's only one aspect of the fight that has changed that does actually change all other aspects of the fight, which we mentioned at the beginning, which is Scary Fog. So when you pull Lei Shi, you'll notice that she now has like some massive circle around her. And if you are not inside this circle, you'll start taking stacks of Scary Fog. Now each stack deals ticking damage on yourself and also places a circle around you, similar to Lei Shi's circle. However, it's a lot smaller. Now if anyone, including bosses or mobs or whatever, are inside that circle, they'll start taking an extra 10% damage, and it stacks. So however many stacks that player's got, that player's on 7 stacks of Scary Fog, anyone inside that little circle of that player will take 70% more damage. However, that circle does not apply to the player who has the circle.
Yeah.
So the player who has the circle will only be taking ticking damage. They won't be taking the 70% or whatever amount of stacks you have extra damage.
So say like if you did have 10 stacks and you were right next to Lei Shi would be taking 100% extra damage. Any other players within that circle would also be taking 100% extra damage, but you yourself will not be taking that 100% extra damage. You'll just be taking the ticking damage.
Now the problem with Scary Fog is that the duration of the debuff isn't that long, which means you need to keep going out to reapply it when you go in to keep the damage multiplier on the boss. And this is the reason why you want to have 2 people doing the rotation. And first off, we're going to talk about 2 range DPS taking the rotation, and then we'll talk about a 3rd tank in a second.
Now with 2 ranged DPS, mainly what you need to do is just make sure that the boss, the most key point in the fight where the boss needs to have this damage multiplier is during the getaway, because it hurts so much more on heroic, the higher the damage the multiplier the boss has on him, as long as no other players are standing in that player's circle, so you've got to make sure you give them some space so they can stand next to the boss and the players aren't standing in them. As long as the boss has a very high damage multiplier, the getaway ends so quickly, because it's done by percentage of the boss's health. If you take away like 3 or 4%, the boss will stop doing getaway. So if you do have like, I don't know, a 10 or 12 stacked Scary Fog on the boss, you'll be taking between 100 and 120% extra damage, which means that it will just go away very quickly. Also, during the protect phases, it's very, very key that these ads do have a damage multiplier on them, because then you can just get out straight, or you can get it out so much quicker and then go straight back onto the boss.
However, when you are doing the protect phases, it's very important that that player does not go and stack not only on the ad. I mean, the ad is a good thing, but if you're on the tank as well, the tank will probably get one shot, especially if he's tanking Lei Shi, because he'll be taking the extra damage as well. So it's very, very important that when you move in, that you position yourself very, very carefully and don't get anyone killed. Now, when the boss does leave hide from the special, the stack is almost reapplied instantly, so you need to make sure that so it doesn't drop, or you might want it to drop if your stacks are very, very high, because you will start taking a lot of damage. But we'll talk about stack dropping in a minute. You want to make sure that you're out of the circle. So if the boss spawned right near the stairs, near where you pulled the boss, then you want to make sure that you're near the stairs towards Shah, so your stacks will definitely reapply and you won't be within the circle.
Now, in terms of how many stacks you really want, the boss, ideally between 8 and 12 stacks is a really nice place, like a really nice damage multiplier on the boss for the getaway, and generally during the phases, because of course you want to have the damage multiplier on the boss for as long as possible, because the berserk is really quite tight. This is kind of quite variable. You do need to have a lot of communication, because if you go really, really high stacks, the ticking damage on you is going to be ridiculous. You're going to be taking so much damage, especially if 2 people on very high stacks. So what we personally did is just, as long as the other person had fairly high stacks, then you could drop yours and then go out and keep stacking up against once it's dropped, and then that person will just have to refresh his a couple more times by quickly going out, getting the replay, going back in. So he'll go up a couple more stacks while your stacks are constantly restacking, meaning that once it's time for him to drop his stack, so he'll be on like 13 or 14, you'll be back up to 8 or 9 or something. That's the whole idea. You just need to have a massive amount of communication in between those two range stackers in order to make sure that, one, you always have a damage multiplier at all points, really, mainly for getaway and protect, but if you don't have a damage multiplier on the boss at any point otherwise, you will hit in rage, and it is still very, very tight on your first couple of kills. So as long as you can have those high damage multipliers on the boss at pretty much all times, and you can sort out a rotation in between your DPS where the boss has it at the most important times, then you shouldn't have too much of an issue.
Now, there is also a way of doing the boss with 3 tanks. Instead of having your 2 normal tanks during the protect phase, pick up one of the ads, and then whatever range DPS has the stacks to then apply the stacks to that ad. You can have a 3rd tank constantly sat out stacking. This also allows you to use 2 healers. You can still use 3 healers if you really need to, but it's a lot easier to use 2 healers at this point. And this tank that stood out can just get ridiculous stacks. He can get 20 stacks, which means when the ad spawns in the protect phase, that ad will like die in about 3 seconds. It will just literally just explode, and it also means that on the getaway you have 200% minimum extra damage going in on the boss. And the best tanks to do this job is really a warrior, because warriors can charge and they can heroic leap and all that kind of crazy shit just to get in the boss's melee range. Death Knights and Paladins can also do it with speed increases, and Druids have got their own speed increases, but generally you want a warrior doing this. And we didn't, like on screen now in this footage now, we didn't personally use this tactic. We did try it and we didn't really like it, but we can definitely see its benefits. It definitely does work. People do use this, so you can try that instead.
So overall, this fight, it hasn't really changed really that much at all, except for the Scary Fog stacks, and it's really like guild by guild people do it differently, and we can't really say this is definitely the right way or this is definitely the right way. It's pretty much how it works for your guild and how comfortable your people are. As long as you have a ridiculous stack on the boss and your healers can keep healing, then it's GG, really. And
during progressing on it, if you do reach the enrage, then you know you can kill the boss. The stacks just need to be better.
Yeah.
So that's what you should really be doing. And when you are progressing, if you hit the enrage, it's like, well, GG, we can kill this boss. We just need to get the stacks done better.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching. If this guide did help out, please do give us a like. It helps us quite a lot. And make sure to comment, rate and subscribe.
And if you'd like to see any other 10-man heroic guides here by FatBoss, then please do click up on the annotations you'll see on your screen now. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, love.
Yeah.